why would you not put that level of self-care into your own self, wanting to ensure that you are happy, wanting to ensure that you, if you're down, that you uplift your spirits. And it's about being in a relationship with yourself in a way, and giving yourself that level of care and attention and putting some real focus on being happy. That doesn't mean the same thing for everyone, but once you understand what being happy means for you, you've clocked it.
Thank you for joining me on Socialcast, Bilal.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. For the people that are listening, just explain quickly who you are and what you do, and then we'll just have a general chat. I haven't wrote anything down today, so it's just going to be a free chat.
Yeah, no, good. That's good. The more normal and natural it is, the better. It's always quite hard introducing yourself because you don't know where to start. But so my name is Bilal. I currently work at I think a really innovative institution in Manchester called University Academy 92. We're a new kid on the block. We're a brand new higher education institution trying to do higher education in a modern and different way. My role there is Director of People and Operations. I am originally from Armley in Leeds. You can probably tell from the Yorkshire accent, so good to talk to a fellow Yorkshire lad. And I'm 28 years old. Had a quite interesting lead up to get into where I am. Quite proud of being at director level at 28. Yeah. So I thought it would be quite cool to join you on this and have a bit of an open chat about some of what you do and some of what I do.
Definitely. So I kind of want to go a little bit back in time from when you was a student. So as a student, first of all, what did you study? And then second of all, did you think it was going to help towards where you currently are?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because so I studied law. So I went and I did a law degree. Thought I wanted to become a commercial lawyer, work in one of the big commercial firms in London or even in Leeds. And so commercial law is quite interesting for those of you that are potentially into kind of contracts and negotiations and working through how to bring businesses together. So when business A does a deal with business B, once they agree on the specific terms and that they want a trading relationship or a business relationship, then the lawyers take over and they do all the sort of detailed work in terms of, well, if something goes wrong, what's the contingency, what are each of the parties' roles and responsibilities and accountabilities and all of that real fun stuff. And one of the things that I realized quite quickly was I'm quite a people's person. So I quite like being around people and helping people and being able to measure the impact of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And commercial law seemed a little bit different to wanting to achieve that ambition. So then I moved from there wanting to become a barrister. I wanted to become a criminal barrister and supporting people in that area of the law, because I thought, well, a barrister stands up in court, they engage with their clients, they're engaging with the court. It's quite an interactive job. There's a lot of paperwork and things that you do behind the scene, but I quite like the idea of being an advocate. Yeah. And then I realised that it's quite an interesting area and that it's quite a challenging area to really try and break through and do the kind of things that I wanted to achieve. Mm-hmm. Anyway, ultimately, I went through my undergrad years, I went through postgrad, and I quickly realised that although law is an amazing subject for people that really are interested in that, it wasn't going to help me achieve what I wanted to achieve in my life. It wasn't going to allow me to make the impact that I wanted to make. So very quickly, I realized that I wanted to go into a different area. And so I decided to take a kind of complete U-turn and go into business and particularly human resource, because I think ultimately businesses and organizations are just a group of people. And if you can think progressively to help people unlock their talent and their potential, then you're going to have a really successful business, because ultimately it's all down to how great your people are, how hard they work, and what they can do for the business and what you can do for them. And it's that sort of balanced partnership. So I was quite keen in trying to do some new things in the world of HR that perhaps other organisations would look at and think, this is quite off the charts, he's a bit crazy, but try and treat people like people. So decided not to do law and go down that route instead.
And how did getting the job that you're at now, how did it correspond? Obviously, did the degree, because it's a different degree to what you're actually doing now, isn't it? So how did you approach that? Did you approach it more as, like you said, people's thing, where you interact with them, they get to know you as a person and your personality and what you're trying to bring to the business? Or did they do it more formally, like you typically see in a normal interview, where they're looking at your CV and then from there onwards?
Yeah, I think experience helped. I think the academic qualification helped, but I think that helped at the application stage. I think it comes down to who you are as a person, and I think what UA92 were looking for was somebody that thought differently, and that thinks differently, that thinks outside the box, that is wanting to challenge the norm, and the norm is what everybody else is doing. It's really easy to look at what company X or company Y or company Z is doing. I mean, you know this, you're a creative. You can quite easily find bubbles of really great work and just copy it off as being your own. The hard thing is starting from scratch. The hard thing is putting a blank piece of paper in front of you and thinking, how can we create something completely new and completely innovative for this person or this company? But in terms of how the law degree helped, I always say to everyone, what's really lucky for me, and I consider myself incredibly lucky, is that the law governs quite a lot. It's one of the three, if you like, pillars of society. You have the government, you have the executive arm of the government, you have parliament, and then you have the justice system. So it helps keep, obviously, law and order on the criminal side, and most people are probably through television and through the things they see on the news, probably more aware of that side of things. But actually, the law governs a lot of what we can and can't do in business and in all sorts of transactions and parts of society. So it's been incredibly helpful to understand legal principles, certainly in HR, because it's contracts of employment. If somebody's got a grievance, they're not happy at work, if you've got to go through redundancies, you've got to dismiss somebody, manage performance, you could potentially end up in an employment tribunal, you could potentially have a case against you. So you've got to understand how to develop policies and processes that align to the law, because what you can't do is say, well, we're doing this and the law says something else. So if you're kind of out of kilter with it, that's a bit of a problem. So it has been really useful because it gives you a foundation of knowledge which you can apply in all sorts of different areas. And then I think skills like debating, presentation, being able to present a case, a business case, negotiation, all that kind of stuff really helps, because you can transfer that into any part of your life.
What do you think of that way of, how do you think that jobs are do you think jobs are changing on how they get applicants, or do you think it's staying the same? Because personally, I think I don't know, to be honest, I never had a normal job, so I can't really speak for anyone else, luckily enough. But I know that friends have, got jobs and whatnot, and it is the same. I think time's changing, and I think it kind of needs to change with time. Is that something that UA92's actually doing as well at the same time? Because I know, obviously, it's an educational university, but I know that you've added a lot of different, new technology way of working. Is that something you also take in consideration?
Yeah, of course. I think you have to there's two things really, two answers I want to give you. One is, I think you have to look at the way that an organisation acts and what they say compared to what they do. It's really easy to say one thing and do another. And one of the things that we're really proud of, and one of the core elements of our culture at UA92 is what you see is what you get. You know, we don't try to pretend to be anything that we're not. We're really honest, we're really transparent, because eventually people will figure you out, and it's much more hard work losing people when they're disenfranchised with you than being really open and honest and not having that person join in the first instance. And one of the things that we do is, you know, often I think you can get really quite fussy in the higher education sector about the type of candidate that you bring in. And, you know, I think qualifications and experience certainly plays a part. And in some roles, they're absolutely fundamental. But I think, you know, you can start to see a real trend, and it's happened over the last 10 years. And progressive organizations and companies are doing this more and more. You can't buy character and personality. You can't buy hard work. You can't buy people that are determined, that if they get knocked down, they're going to get up and they're going to go at it again. They're not lazy. They are the kind of go-getters, proactive people that use their initiative, that you don't have to kind of babysit or hold their hand through every little task. That kind of work ethic, that attitude, those values, they're really hard to teach. You can teach somebody how to do a job. You can teach skill, but you can't teach values and work ethic. So our entire process, our entire principle, and that of other progressive organizations, is based on hiring for character and values, and then training for skill. And I think that's really important. I think that, you know, when you are going for jobs, a lot of the hiring processes are quite similar. They're quite outdated. They just look at the black and white on paper, and we're all more than what we are on paper. You know, people can look at my academic qualifications and my experience and make a judgment. And I think when they meet me, they're quite surprised, because I'm quite different. And I always say, it's that old saying, isn't it? Don't judge a book by its cover. You never really know with people, and people are hell complicated. You know, people are very, very complicated, with the most sophisticated creation on the planet, and to our knowledge in the universe. So I think you've got to understand that there's more to people, and everybody has lots of different parts to them and lots of different things that they're interested in. You no longer have a professional that is just, you know, able to act in a capacity within one part of the business. It's all about bringing people together, bringing ideas together. You know, somebody in HR might have a great marketing idea, might have a great idea on how to recruit students, might have a great idea on how to sell a product. So you've got to listen to those ideas. You've got to breed a culture of collaboration and working together. The other side of the answer is, I think people undervalue themselves a hell of a lot. And I think one of the things, I've been really lucky. I've had a few friends, and I've had a few professionals that I've coached and I've worked with, and given some advice to throughout not only my studies, but whilst I've been in my career as well. And one of the things I've seen happen quite a lot is that, one, people don't want to help each other because we're quite selfish. But actually there's enough to go around, and people are happy to help each other survive. But then when people need help to thrive and to do really well, we have that element of, oh, they're doing better than me, instead of really thinking, well, you know what, if I can make a contribution that can help that person do really well, isn't that a great thing to do for another person? And then I should self-reflect and look at myself in the mirror and think, if I'm jealous of that, or if I want to be like that, what do I need to do to get there? And so rather than putting that person down and not giving them the help to thrive, because you're not thriving, you should then turn the tables and look at yourself. I fundamentally believe. And I think the other thing is as well that a lot of people undervalue themselves and just settle. I've seen this quite a lot. People they underestimate their own self-worth and their own value, and they settle for good rather than having the patience to wait for great. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. it's much harder to say no than it is yes. It's much harder to know when you have to say no and when the right time is to say yes. Being a yes person is easy, you know that. But being somebody that can have the confidence to say no and pick and choose the right things because they understand themselves, they understand their own value and worth, that's more difficult. So I think, organisations have to be more progressive. They have to look beyond the paper and the application process. They have to stop using sort of the traditional bias of age and gender and all the rest of it, and start looking at the individual. And taking the time to meet people, I think, is important. And then I think people also need to be understanding of helping one another to thrive, not just survive, and understanding their own value and self-worth, and being confident to say no and pass something along, as well as of course saying yes.
That's like you literally put life in a bubble there, because that's what life is all about. It's like, I feel like, especially I see it a lot in my industry, and I've said it numerous times on this podcast, and a lot of people probably hate me for it, but it is a very selfish game, and a lot of people claim to be, oh yeah, I'm a team person, I want to work as a team, I want to push this person, and then when it comes to the actual that opportunity, they don't want to do it, or when they do it and they try it and someone else gets more accreditation than they do, just because obviously maybe someone, like usually the director, gets the main credit, they don't like it, so then obviously they start saying bad things or trying to tarnish your business and take other clients, and that's all cool, because at the end of the day, obviously the person that is the has the right mindset and is a good person is ultimately going to win and thrive regardless. But I always try to help people's mindset in that sense, and I feel like this podcast has definitely helped me as well, because I'm not perfect, with knowing that the thing that you said, there's enough to go around for everyone. And the thing about self-worth is so powerful. As soon as you know how to say no, that is like a whole different level to yourself and maybe to your business as well. I've realized a lot this year, because I've said no to a few projects. I've just brushed it away. I'll pass it on to someone else when I feel like.
And it's hard, isn't it?
It's so hard. Literally, it's like you don't want to say no because you feel bad, but it's also like you need to think this is where the balance of selfish and also catering for people is in a way, because it's kind of like, is it selfish of me to say no, or is it professional of me to kind of say no but then suggest them to someone else because I feel like that's not going to benefit me in my career? It is very tough, but you have to act on it as a professional manner rather than say, no, this is not for me, see you later. Kind of reference other people and whatnot, and that's how you build relationships, and that's how you obviously let other people thrive at the same time as well. But for people that are struggling to kind of accept that they're the issue, not everyone else around them, what advice would you give to them type of people? Because you don't realize you're in that bubble. You don't realize it's you that's a problem. From being from being through that, and I think everyone goes through it at some point in their life. But obviously, I'm out of that now, but it's kind of hard to put into words, and I feel like you'd be way better at it than there's a way out of it. But I think for me, it just takes time and time away from the actual work and appreciating it as an art form for me in my field rather than as a competition. But yeah, just in general life, what advice would you give to people? Exercises.
What to people that are sort of in that trap of
that trap of everyone's against them, but really and truly they're thinking about they're the issue basically.
I think there's definitely advice you can give those people. I think I'm really lucky. I'm sure I know you're in the same boat. We've talked. I'm really lucky. I've got an amazing family and an amazing support network. I've got a group of friends that are really decent, that you could not talk for a month or 2 months, and then it's like you talk after a few months of getting on with life, and it's like you only talked the day before. And those kind of connections and relationships are fundamental to all of us as people. But I think you've got to surround yourself with people that will tell you as it is. Get rid of bullshitters. I think you have to have people that can put you in check, and that will not just see things that you're doing and go, oh, you're brilliant, you're great, I think it's fantastic. People that can just tell you, you know what, I think you're undervaluing yourself, or you know what, you why wouldn't you help that person? Because tomorrow, I always say to people, don't burn bridges. You never know when you're going to need to cross over that bridge again. And if you look at it as two sides and a load of water, if you look at it as an island A and island B with a load of water in the middle, you know, and it's infested with, I don't know, sharks or crocodiles, whatever you fancy. And there's, you know, 10 bridges across that. Why would you blow a load of them up? You know, if they're all wooden bridges and there's a chance that there might be a hurricane and one might get taken out and it's not in your control, and you might lose access to the other side because of things outside of your control. Why would you then yourself go and burn down the bridges that exist? It just doesn't make any sense to me. That might be a really crap metaphor to use, but
I like to vision things when people speak.
Visualize, yeah, me too. Me too.
Makes so much sense.
But this is it. I don't get why you would break down bridges. I think for me, one, those people have to ensure they've got a tight support network. And, you know, I totally get not everybody's as fortunate as you and I. Not everybody has that family unit. And sometimes people's families are friends and non-blood relatives, and that works too. I think what you can do is you can get hung up on excuses.
Yeah.
You know, I know quite a lot of people that have had some real tough experiences, have not had the family unit, have had things go really drastically left in their life instead of right, and things go quite wrong, yet they've still powered through, and they've not let that become an excuse. So I think if you're the type of person that's in that trap and you feel the world's against you, you probably need to give yourself a massive slap, if I'm being honest, because ultimately, until you can face reality yourself, nothing's going to change. And I always say to people, you always have that time before you go to sleep, when you're lying in bed, that you might be surfing Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Shut your phone off for a bit. Give yourself some time to just think about your day, think about your life, think about what you're doing, and put some investment in you. And I think for those people that are stuck in that trap, the only way you can pull them out of it is if they realize it themselves. Everybody in the world, the Archangel Gabriel, could come down and tell them that they are making a mistake. They're not going to listen, because that's the type of person they are. The only person they're going to listen to is themselves. And so my advice to them would be, start looking at how you could build opportunities through working with people collectively, through helping others, so that they can in turn help you, and connect with the kind of people that are exhibiting that kind of personality. You're a classic example of somebody that does a lot to give back, whilst you're also working hard and hustling to build something for yourself. And I think that's important, because that shows a balance and an understanding of both sides. Absolutely. So I think they need to give themselves, you need to give yourself a big slap and kind of give yourself time to reflect on what you're doing and to really understand what is going right and what is going wrong in your life and what you want to change. Because once you identify it, then you're in a much better position than you were before. You know what you need to do. The hard thing then is actually getting up and doing something. You know, a lot of there's a really great quote, I think I posted it on my Instagram, and it said, one of the biggest failures for most people is that the fact that they don't start. And it's absolutely true, because lots of people can identify what they need to work on, but it's really difficult to get the drive and the motivation to start to tackle those things. And sometimes when you start tackling those things, it's hard to keep stuck in and to carry on. But you have to ask yourself the question, how much do you value yourself? If you're not going to, invest in yourself and you're going to go on Facebook or Twitter, or you're going to get involved in this social media culture to create an online personality that's going to impress people that, quite honestly, don't really care, I mean, who are you? You get 30 likes instead of 20. What does that do? Is that going to pay your bills? It's not. What satisfaction does that give you apart from that you've got a few likes? And you know what? People get to a point where they look back at it, and when I was younger, there was Bebo and MySpace and MSN and all of that stuff, and none of it exists now. It's gone. My likes that I got on Bebo or MySpace, the amount of people I talked to on MSN, does not matter. I can categorically tell you right now, it has made zero difference in my life. But at that point, as a young person, I thought it was, that was the in thing. And it's really hard not to follow the crowd, not to be a sheep, and follow the shepherd, I guess. It's hard to sort of say, you know what, everybody's going in that direction. I'm actually going that way because that's the right thing for me. And I'll give you another sort of example. I always say to people, if you're in a relationship and you're with your partner and obviously you love them, you have affection for them, and equally, if people can't relate to a relationship, think about your parents or a family relationship. If that person who you have a lot of affection and love for, if they're feeling down or they're sad and you notice it, what do you instantaneously do?
Well, you go and sort it out and take care of them and make sure they're okay.
And why do you do that?
Because you care, and it's kind of like selflessness, in it. So I think mindset and challenging yourself is a great way of kind of getting out of that bubble. Traveling was a massive challenge for me, and not in terms of like I've done traveling before, but traveling to the places that I know not many people travel to and do it in a different way rather than the stupid touristy way.
I saw some of your travels, and it made me think about my own, and you did a better job of capturing the places that you were in than I did on my iPhone. Although I think I did a pretty good job. But just let me just go back to that point, if I can. Why would you go and try and console somebody that you love or affectionate about if they're sad? Why would you do that?
To make them happy.
Right. So if you think about it, now, let me give you examples. You see it on Facebook, you see it on Instagram. People will post, I've come back from work, I've had a really tough week, and, their boyfriend or the girlfriend has ran the bath for them. They've put a glass of wine there, some candles, and a bath bomb, and or people have been, they've gone out for a meal or to the cinema, or they've had a movie night in, or they've bought their mum some flowers or something like that. And they go out of their way to make an effort with somebody that they have affection and love for. If they're down or not feeling well, or they're sad, or things aren't going right for them, you make an effort to make them feel better, because that's what we're like as human beings. We like to keep people happy, most of us, unless you're a psychopath. You want people to be happy, and if you have love and affection for somebody, you want to put the time in to take away their stress, and you worry about them, and you put in an effort to help them. So I say to people, flip that around to yourself, and think about being in a relationship with yourself, and question how much love and affection do you have for yourself. Because I guarantee you the majority of the people that will be watching this, whoever is watching, will not put a fraction of the time that they would put in to help lift others' moods, make them happy, help them when things are going wrong. They wouldn't put a fraction of the same amount of time into themselves. And one of the things I always say to people is, why? Why would you not put that level of self-care into your own self, wanting to ensure that you are happy, wanting to ensure that you, if you're down, that you uplift your spirits. And it's about being in a relationship with yourself in a way, and giving yourself that level of care and attention, and putting some real focus on being happy. That doesn't mean the same thing for everyone, but once you understand what being happy means for you, you've clocked it.
100%.
Honestly, you've clocked it.
I think it's a great way of putting it as well, because you kind of are in a relationship with your own self, because you're always battling with your mental thoughts and your physical well-being and all these other challenges that you give yourself. So you kind of are in a relationship with yourself, and it's a great way of putting it, because you're always trying to better yourself. Well, majority of us are. And then I think what helps me, I know that, well, we probably could relate to this, and I know it's only a section of people that kind of can continuously do this, but people that are wanting to change, I think the best way is to constantly keep doing new things, challenging yourself to step out the box a little bit, and you don't always rely on a friend to come to the gym. Don't always rely on a friend to go watch a film. Like, do things yourself, and I think you'll appreciate your own company way more. And when you get comfortable in your own company, start making challenges for yourself, or write stuff down. Like, I've got a mood board right here. Like, I just write everything down that I want to achieve, and I'm constantly looking at that, thinking, well, I'm not working hard enough. I need to do this. I need to do that. And it's keeping
It's really interesting. It's really interesting you say that, because one of the things that I did when I was studying, and when I was really, I'm still really ambitious, I still do it now, is I used to have a whiteboard in my room. I was the only kid at 15, 16 that asked his parents for a whiteboard in his room. And what I used to do is I used to print out my revision timetable. I used to print out my uni timetable and stick it next to my whiteboard. And I used to print out quotes, and I was a massive fan of Steve Jobs back then. And there's loads of quotes that from Nelson Mandela and other people that had achieved things that weren't necessarily lots of business success and being, billionaires with yachts and mansions and all of that, but people who are really respected, because I thought, do you know what? You have worked hard, you've put the graft in, and you have earned your success through hard work and perseverance. And often things haven't gone right for you, but you've still kept on it. Yeah. And I used to stick them around there. And I used to write my goals on my board, and I used to kind of write short-term goals and long-term goals. And I used to kind of go through Google and I'd Google kind of cars. And one of my all-time favorite cars still is the Rolls-Royce Phantom. And I used to look at the annual releases of that, and that used to motivate me, and it still does motivate me. And I say to myself, one day I will have one. And that sounds really materialistic, but I'm being really honest with you here. I think that's not the only thing that drives me, but it is one of the things that drives me. And people think, oh, well, I'm not, lots of people say, I don't want to be material, money doesn't matter and stuff. And that's fine if that's you. But if it does, be honest. Yeah, be honest with yourself. Be honest about what matters to you. And to me, it's a fine balance. I think it's about being content in what I want to do and being true to kind of my family, my values, the background, being almost honouring the kind of principles that our granddad instilled in us. He's no longer with us. But that kind of, I think that level of being focused on giving back and doing something right and having a purpose, and giving your life a level of purpose, so that we all get one shot. We're all on the planet for however many years. Making sure that you leave the world a little better than how you found it is really important to me. But equally, on the other side, I do want to earn. I do want to have the cash to be able to do some of those things, to help others. Because I always say to people, before you start trying to change the world, do something in the world yourself. Put yourself in a position where you can help others without jeopardizing your own health, your own ability to survive. Go out there and thrive first, and help people along the way in one manner, like you're kind of doing at the moment. And then when you're in a position where you've achieved what you want to achieve, and hopefully you're thriving. And again, there's lots of things that some people make it, some people don't. There's lots of things that contribute. But if you stick to it, I do strongly believe you will get to a position where you're able to to thrive. And then at that point, when you're happy and content, you can then use some of your success to help others in a particular way. But your mood board is very similar to what I did with my whiteboard. And I used to just put quotes and things that would help inspire me. For my revision timetables on that, I was a genius on Excel for the age that I was. Used to watch YouTube videos on how to do Excel spreadsheets to create my revision guide, because it's all about educating yourself and not waiting for others to give you that education. If you don't know something today, it's completely different to how it was 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Everything's on YouTube. You've got tutorials right down into the minuscule detail on how to do things. There is no excuse for people who are entrepreneurs or go-getters, or people that get up every day and attack the day with, real determination to go and do something and make each day count. There's no reason not to be that type of person, because you have, a lot of resource at your fingertips. But it's really interesting you do the same with the mood board, because I do think similar people have similar kind of traits and trends, but we've not talked about that ever before. And you don't know that I used to do that. It's just really quite interesting, I think, to see that you're also operating in a similar manner, which is it's quite interesting.
I've only actually done it this year. I've always wrote stuff down on my phone, but I've never actually written it and put it on my wall. And I feel like it's impacted everything so much more, because I can physically see it every single day. So if you put it in the notes on your phone, it's like gets lost in the archives, to be honest, because I'm doing all sorts. Like, my business is evolved in social media, so I'm always on social media doing stuff and all that sort of stuff. Kind of want to touch back on something. What was we on about now? On about YouTube. I really do believe like YouTube's the new university. People are saying it already as well, and the fact that there's so much information out there, but people claim that there's not to do, or I love to do that job, but I don't have the grades, or I don't know much about it. It's just pure excuses. And I think these days, like I said, especially with social media, people get comfortable way too more often than I think they did back in the days. Because before social media, you had to graft. You couldn't just sit on your ass and just, like I say, live a fake life and try to get famous, or there's way more opportunities with social media as well. It's not even just a bad thing. You haven't got to sit in your ass. It's just way more opportunities in terms of connections that you can get, sharing your work and portfolio and all these different type of things. So it's got its positives as well as its negatives. So I know we've been tarnishing it a little bit, but it is a really good source of learning and adapting new life skills and then putting it into practice. I think one thing that I always say to people is learning theory is okay, but if you don't put it to practice, there's no point in learning the theory. And I feel like when I was in uni, that's what we kind of did a lot. And I'm not tarnishing the uni, because I loved my tutors and everything. I think it's just the way that the educational system works back then. And it's changing way more as we go on. But I think it's moving slow. And there's only a few universities that are doing it. UNIT, one of them. And there's also a few different ones, to be fair, and that I know around that are kind of catching up with the technology. But I do think universities really need to stop thinking more about the theory side of things and start actually doing 50-50 theory, practical. Whatever you learn in theory-wise, let them learn it practical-wise as well. Because
you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. I think 2 points you touched on. I'll pick up on the university point first. I think absolutely, I'm a big advocate for higher education to move with the times. It is great teaching people how things work in a classroom. Guess what? The world of work is not a classroom. You hit that ground running from day one, and more and more and more as the world gets more advanced and competition rises, generation on generation, there's a larger expectation on graduates and larger expectation on graduate level applicants, because companies are wanting more and more and more. And you know what, to some extent they're right to demand that, because we should be developing how we are training and educating young people and people of all ages for that matter. But I think that there has to be an element in higher education of instilling character traits and skill set within those individuals that are going to be fundamental to not only their personal but professional lives. So it's about no matter what degree you're on, you should understand commercial awareness.
Yeah.
You know, you should understand the basics of negotiation. You should have classes in financial literacy. You know, how do you manage budgets? What is a mortgage on the personal front? What's a mortgage? What does an APR? What does APR stand for? What does it mean? What's interest rates? What's an ISA? All that personal finance side. But equally, when you go into the business world, what is it? What do they mean by a PO? You know, what's an invoice? How do budgets work? How do you read a standard profit and loss account, and that kind of stuff that lots of students don't know, unless, of course, they're in a business administration degree or something relevant, or they're an accounting and finance student. But a law student certainly wouldn't know that. Yeah. So how do you create more rounded graduates? And we certainly do that at UA92. We have our character and personal development, which has things like problem solving, influential communicator, financial literacy, digital literacy, understanding how to utilize social media in a positive way. And that touches on the other point that you made. And no matter what degree you're on, you have to go through that character and personal development process, because we think those skills are universal. And regardless of what degree you're doing, there are some universal skills that you need in the world of work and in your personal life. And so we offer that. And I think higher education needs to do that more. And they need to, educate students on how the theory works in practice, because I think it is a bit of a culture shock to some students who go from the classroom into the world of work and realise that things are a little different. The second point that you touched on first, actually, but I'll address second, was the power of social media. 100% I agree with you. The amount, all it is access to information. Yeah. And the more we go ahead, you can tell I'm in Armley. The police sirens going off in the background. It's not me. But it's access to education and information. And if you look at YouTube and you look at, even going onto Google, you can find tutorials that are written. People write blogs, successful business people that are not famous, but they've achieved business or commercial success, or they've achieved success in whatever part of their life. Yeah. People are writing blogs, people are posting YouTube videos. The amount of information out there is ridiculous. You can get an answer to almost anything. Today, if you need to call a plumber, you Google it. There was a time you'd have to go and find the yellow book and look through that. Yeah, do you remember? And the thing is, people don't understand the power of technology and how to harness that power to benefit them. So you are absolutely right. You can educate yourself, you can better yourself. And even today, I read lots of articles, I watch lots of tutorials and videos on areas like marketing, on finance and accounting, and lots of other areas that have nothing to do with my day job, but it's about educating myself to understand what other people do and how they think and how they operate, because that makes me a better HR leader, it makes me a better person, and it gives me knowledge and puts me ahead of others. Yeah. And I think life's about constantly educating yourself. So I agree with you. I think access to information has increased massively. And, education doesn't stop when you finish your degree or you come out of school. You should always be looking to learn new things. Yeah. I'm a big believer in that you can learn something new from everybody that you meet. Everybody that you meet can teach you something new. I don't care if you're a professor. I don't care if you're somebody that's got just a load of GCSEs and started working at the age of 16. Doesn't matter. You can learn something new from every person you meet. Unless you're that egotistical type of person that thinks you know it all. We were talking about those people that are in that trap. And then you're in a hopeless kind of situation. But you've got to be open to want to learn about people and learn new things. Because if you have that open personality, and I think you do, I think people like us do, then you'll be surprised by how much people want to invest in you as well. So you're absolutely right about social media giving access to information and people being able to educate themselves. The other thing is, look at all the bloody businesses that people are running. You know, the amount of Facebook groups that I get invited to where people have set up their own bakery or sort of little candle wax business where they're selling those little candles, or they're selling, you know, sort of homemade frames and things, and people are buying it off them because, you know, ultimately there are people out there that understand the importance of community. And if somebody local is doing something, instead of going into, you know, multinational and putting your money in there, if you like a product, and I join all those groups, I join, you know, there's about, I'm a part of like 16 different businesses that 16 different people in the local area running, and they're all bakers and they do baked goods. And then I've got about 20 candle businesses that I'm a part of. And a couple of them I've bought stuff off for gifts, whether it's for colleagues or friends or family. And the reason why I think it's important to do that is because sometimes you can look at these things and you could scoff at it and go, oh, you know, I'm keen to hear about what you experienced when you started your business. But it'll be similar where people will look at it and go, oh, she or he's doing this. And you can just go and buy it at Asda, or you could just go buy it at the Tesco. And I think that kind of mentality is that kind of person that we talked about before, that don't want to help people thrive. And, you know, if somebody's down on the luck and they're, you know, you're the savior, oh, well, you know, this person's poor or they're homeless, oh, well, I'll make a donation. That people do that because, one, yes, they're really generous, but some people also, and this is going to make me sound really bad saying it, but some people also do it for that feel-good factor. And I think sometimes it's good to help people for the sake of helping them. And when you see people trying to make a go of something, you know, that doesn't mean that you have to go and buy from every single bakery business or candle business. Otherwise, you know, you'd have nothing left in your bank account. But I think where people are really trying to make a go of it, rather than, you know, just kind of looking at it and battering it down or beating it down, you know, share the business, share that on your page. It might be that nobody on your Facebook or your Instagram even looks at it. It might be that nobody even clicks on it or does anything, but there is a chance that some people might, and it gives a level of confidence and a boost to that individual that sees that and thinks, oh, actually, do you know what? There are people out there that are supporting me. And it gives them, they might be feeling really down. They might have had that up for 3 weeks and nobody's bought anything. And you just sharing that and giving them the opportunity by saying, oh, this is a great business, friends, have a look at this if there's anything you can get involved in. That could mean the difference between somebody giving up and not having a go at that business and then them having a go at it. So social media has meant that more people can create businesses. They've got better access to information. They can self-educate, and there is less reliance on other things or organization or people. It allows you to become more independent. It allows you to become more self-sufficient and self-serving. And that, I think, is the biggest strength of technology, the internet and social media. 100% the best aspect of it.
People need to see it as a material thing. So like utilizing it as a material to its advantages rather than using it as pleasure. Because, well, I say that, but I use it for pleasure as well, but I know my limit.
Of course.
But yeah, it's funny subject about the Facebook page thing, because I do get that sense of feeling, you know, when someone shares my work or someone comments on my work or something like that. I completely feel exactly how you said. I feel good. Even if I don't get anything from it, as long as people are appreciating my work and my craft and the time that's gone into something that I do, I really appreciate that. And I always make sure that people know that as well. So I always message them or share it or comment on it or
you do
anything I can to just show my appreciation. And then in retaliation, I'll always do something back for them. So, and whether they ask for it or not, I just always do that. I just feel like I have to, not have to, but I want to help them.
Do you remember back in like primary school or high school when you used to have the assemblies and they'd hand out certificates and everybody would pretend they didn't want one, but secretly everybody wanted to go up to the front of the assembly and get the certificate and the gold star or whatever, certainly in primary school, and you get a round of applause from everybody in the assembly, and it would make you feel good. It'd make you'd be proud, you know, you'd be chest out, shoulders back, you'd be really confident in what you're doing because you've been recognized. And I think that's, people value recognition, a lot, and being noticed, and for people to appreciate the hard work and effort they've put into something. What you're doing is not easy. Lots of people will look at what you're doing thinking, you just hold the camera around and then the software does it all for you. You click a few buttons and it sorts it all out for you, and it's quite easy editing. People don't appreciate that.
It's funny that you said that, because a lot of friends and family think that. A lot of friends and family think I'm sitting at my computer a lot. They don't see what I'm actually doing with my computer. So it's not even just the filming part. So I'd say if we're doing a music video or any like promotional video or anything like that, even with the stuff that we was gonna do, hopefully it still goes ahead. It's all the pre-production as well. So you got the pre-production, the planning, the communication from start to finish. It's a constant communication thing. You're always communicating, you're always working, you're always doing these things. And then you've got the production side of things, which is actually creating what you plan to do. And then obviously your plan doesn't always go well. So you've got to then think on your feet and, problem solve when you're on set. And then when it comes to the post-production, you're going to realize there's more problems. So you're going to have to do more problem solving. And yeah, it's just a lengthy process that people don't see. And it annoys me sometimes because, like some people will come and approach me and say, oh, I got this great opportunity, it's for experience and blah, 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 blah. And they think what they're doing for me is a benefit more than what I'm doing for them. And that frustrates me because of how much time and effort and knowledge that I put into this for them to say that, because I feel that's an offense. If anyone says that now, obviously I just take a blind eye to it, unless it's an actual opportunity where I see, okay, this is actually a really big opportunity. I see where they're coming from. But majority of the time, they're not big opportunities and they're just bullshitters, really and truly. They're just trying to get you for cheap. So I do feel it is very, very tough, and it's a constant work. It's non-stop. As a business owner myself, you constantly chasing money, because you need to be living.
Of course.
Second of all, clients. You're always trying to get clients. Thirdly, always trying to do the best you can with those clients. So obviously to make the best product, it takes a bit of time. And then when a client pay what you want them to pay, because obviously it's taking a lengthy time, that's when it gets a bit, so then you take on a bit more work, and then you're like overworking yourself. So it's like, it's constantly, I feel like when you're owning a business, it's constantly finding that balance that you are happy with. And it's going to take years to find that. And it's going to take you years to find good clients that you're actually happy working with as well. And anyone that's listening to this that has just started up a business, it's not going to happen overnight. There's no such thing as overnight success. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. I'm far from it. I want to be financially stable. I want products that help and benefit people in I call it a community. And just always innovate and try to do things that I feel like can help people work better or faster at what they do. And just always be humble and nice to people that are always in need or help. I just think that's the best way of doing it. But like I said, the annoying part about it is, which I don't mind, I just crack on, but people take advantage of that and don't see what you're actually trying to do and all that type of things. And that's when it gets a little bit like, I listen to a lot of Gary Vee, and you shouldn't take it to heart, but as a human being, sometimes you do. But it does you do have mixed emotions, and and just letting people know, when you're self-employed, just be prepared for everything. It's a roller coaster, honestly.
It is. But can I ask you, if I can? I know you're asking me questions, but do you notice that when you're doing something like this, it's really evident who really is on your side and who is supporting you and helping you get through it, and who is just a talker? And I think it's hard, isn't it, when you go through that realization of having to surround yourself with the right people. But I think the question, what I'd like to know really is, we talked about recognition. We just talked about how important it is when you put work into something, and you might get paid for it. And of course you need to, you want to have that financial security, you need to pay the bills, you want to be in a financially secure position so that you don't have to worry about money. And eventually, as you grow and you build your business, that's what you want to aim towards, of course. But equally, I think people would be surprised, or some people who don't get this area or don't get this, the kind of mentality that you and I and others that might be watching this share, is how equally you also value somebody looking at a piece of work that you've done and saying, do you know what, that is absolutely incredible. And I know I've done it with stuff that you've done. I've looked at it and thought, how the hell has this guy done this in his bedroom, when we in the corporate world pay thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds to creative agencies and all sorts of agencies and consultants and people that do things that I can't even remember, to achieve some of the quality and the standard of work that you're achieving, you know, with a lot of equipment that you've invested in, money that you've put into your own success. So how has it been for you in terms of, one, I guess, how do you value recognition in comparison to the money that you get in? And how has it been for you in terms of trying to manage expectations with people that don't fully appreciate what it is that you do and the level of work that goes into what you do?
Yeah. To be fair, money versus exposure, let's just say. For that, it's like I've been through that already, and a lot of people are false when they say, "Oh, it's for exposure." Mm-hmm. Until I know myself that that's great exposure for me, then I will consider it. But I feel like a lot of us creators are always stuck in that bubble of, oh well, yeah, I might do this because, you know what, it knows these people, or it drives a Ferrari. All he cares about is saving more money so he can get another Ferrari. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your business. So that's the way I've started to see it now with those type of people. But I think you know who's genuine and you know who's not. And the way to find out that they're genuine is always have Zoom chats, have phone calls, see what they've done in the past, see the history. Yeah. Don't just jump on a bandwagon and think, oh, this is a great opportunity. Oh, this is a rubbish example because Stormzy is not like this. But let's just say it was Stormzy. Oh, Stormzy is great. It's going to get me loads of exposure. Takes a video and just leaves you, doesn't promote you, don't even put your name on the video or nothing. Like that's not great exposure because they haven't done anything for your business. All he's done is take a video and benefit himself.
Yeah.
So that's the
part. It has to be a balance, doesn't it? It has to be that two-way street. And I think as well, we're talking about self-worth and value earlier. You've got to look at that person and think, what are they offering me? And 9 times out of 10, when somebody wants you to do something for free, and then they don't want to give you that exposure and they don't want to credit you, I mean, it's one thing after another. What do they need to do for somebody to realise that this is not the right thing for them and it's a waste of their time? Because I think you also look at the other person, and if they turn around to you and go, listen, I know you've got expenses. I obviously want to do this in the most cost-effective way, but I understand that you are a business. I understand that you have a lot of time in this. When you get that kind of approach, you realise, oh, actually, do you know what? The person is quite appreciative. And that's where you work together. So you don't get, it's not, there's always, I think certainly in your industry, there's always an inequity. So there's an imbalance. And you've got the person requesting the work here and the creative here. The hard thing is to level it up, so that you can really create that partnership and that equal relationship, which I think is quite hard. But I think you've done a lot of work to try and achieve that, haven't you, in terms of being able to say no and really valuing your own worth?
And it took time to do that. Like it took me until now, really and truly, to kind of do that. And I've been doing it for 7 years now. So that's why I've experienced it a lot. So, but everything I do, I always try to do it the best I can do, especially now. I feel like when I went traveling, I know I keep talking about traveling, but I feel like when I had that whole time to think about what it is I wanted to do, and looking back on my old work, I was like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything progressing towards that. And I think the main reason was that it's because of the clients I was working with that wasn't letting me have that creative freedom that I know I'm worthy of. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I'll still work with those people because they're going to pay the bills, but I'll always approach them with a creative input to start with. And then I'll go from there. And got touching about the way people talk as well. I think if you're approaching me in a disrespectful manner, I'm already immediately like, boom, see you later. Especially, but back in the days, I was quite desperate. So I was like, all right, yeah, blah, blah, just do whatever they want me to do. But I just think it's language and showing your appreciation. And anyone that's new or is experiencing this, I think the best way to judge someone is through language. If they're messaging you and being a bit rude or feel like they're coming across in a certain manner, that's when you know to kind of push that person away, because they're not going to respect
value yourself more than the way that they're valuing you. It's important. Do you think your priorities? Do you think traveling and having time out and away from your everyday normal, that everyday hustle, because it is quite intense, isn't it, when you're self-employed and you're wanting to achieve, because you really, you know, I've talked to you, I've got to know you a fair bit. You're hungry to achieve your dream, but you're not so hungry and determined that you're going to do it in a way that you're not happy with and you're not comfortable with. So you'd rather do it right than do it, you know, half right. And that's that takes a lot of individual self-security, and you have to be a secure and confident individual to be able to do that, because a lot of people will cut corners and do what they need to do to get there because they're more bothered about what the outside world perceives them as and what people will think than their own education, their own experience, building things. You know, it's almost like climbing that ladder. You go one rung at a time. If you jump a few rungs, you're never going to get that experience back. You know what I mean? And so you're never going to be that fully complete and that wholesome that you need to be the best that you can be when you are at the top. So I think that's incredibly important. But how did it change you? Because I think you touched on one of the key pieces of advice that I give people, that when you feel down and you feel like you're in a bit of a rut, you sometimes have to remove yourself from your everyday normal and that sort of 100 miles an hour lifestyle that we all live. And did you find that was the case for you when you were out there traveling in a way that I actually think is probably the most powerful, because you see people with so little and so much less than you have, and yet they're happy and they're content and they're a community and they help one another as much as they can. And you see a piece of the world that you're told is in, you know, poverty and degradation, and you see that even with not a lot, you know, even without running water, you know, having to buy bottled water, you know, we take having a tap in our houses for granted. How did that impact you when you came back?
Massively. And I know it's cliche, everyone says, oh, yeah, traveling changed me, but it did.
Did you find yourself?
But I don't think it's about finding yourself. I think it's about humbling yourself. And I think that's where people get confused with it, because you'll never be able to find yourself, because you're always chasing for more. So people, even people in India, they're always chasing for more. And even though they're happy, there's no such thing as, you know, finding yourself. I think there's finding your purpose in life, which is different. But yeah, it definitely did change me. And touching on what you said, just being at a place like India, it really soaking it in, and, you know, being driven about I was driven about by a private driver, because when we actually got there, the hotel that we rang was in a place, you know, because India was having riots when we started traveling. Our hotel was like smack bang in the middle of those riots, so it was actually closed off. And the taxi man said, "Oh, is this where your hotel is?" I'm like, "Yeah." Bearing in mind it was barriers, we weren't even outside the hotel. It's like, "Oh, you can't go down there, riots." And we was like, "Okay, let us ring the hotel." So we rang the hotel, and they shut. So we was basically homeless as soon as we got to India. And being in a place like that the first ever time, it was like, well, what do we do now? But this is a point of, you know, just being a decent human being. The man took us straight away to a travel office, whatever it is, whatever you call them out there. And then the people there took care of us, asked us for chai straight away. Like, yeah, I'll try chai. Drank that, like, and just took care of us. Got a little bit scammed, but
it happens.
Yeah, it happens. And then, yeah, just, I think seeing the things that you see with people being as happy as they are, I think that's one thing that really took me, one thing that really blew my mind, because you see people that are living in tarpaulins with sticks in it right when you're driving past the desert and things like that. But when you get out in the service station, you start talking to people and they're just constantly smiling and constantly happy. And then another thing is, like, when you said people like to thrive off of, like, suggest, in India, people suggest you to go to other companies. Say if you're going to a fabric warehouse and you don't like what they have, they're like, oh yeah, there's another one just over the road, you can go there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, this is next level. You would never hear that in UK. You would never go into a store and say, oh, you don't have this, but do you know anywhere else that I can? They'd be like, no, sorry, I don't know anywhere. And I think just things like that made me really understand that life's not a competition. It's just about being happy and doing what you love. And most of these people in India love what they do. Like, they're just so happy with what they do. And I think so thankful for life. I think that's their perception on life. And I think that definitely changed a lot. I think coming home actually made me more depressed than when I was traveling, because when you come back to a place like this,
you're right,
it's so like depressing and everyone's just moody and mardy and no one's happy.
And this is it. Like I completely relate. And you asked me earlier why, you know, what I do now. I think one of the reasons I changed from wanting to be, you know, I was quite black and white, and, you know, I thought that business meant that you had to exaggerate a bit, you had to do a bit of bullshitting, and you had to pretend to be more than you are, because it was that kind of salesy kind of world. And one of the things that I realized through those years that I spent traveling, I went abroad sort of 3 years in a row, all summer, and I went across Southeast Asia, sort of kept home in Cambodia. We volunteered at this incredible school in just outside the capital in Tonle-Bati, about 30 kilometers outside the capital of Cambodia, Phnom Penh. And the lady that ran this school, there was this, I don't know if you know about it, or anybody watching knows about the Pol Pot regime, which was a little bit compared to the Nazi regime, where Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, he and the Khmer Rouge killed millions of Cambodian people. It was a national genocide, and they have lots of memorials up and down the country about it, and museums about it, and you can go around what they call the killing fields. There's quite a famous documentary and film called The Killing Fields that talks about the Khmer Rouge and what they did in Cambodia. And this was around the time of the Vietnam War. And anybody that was educated was killed because they were a threat. And the lady who runs this school, she was really lucky that she got a scholarship to go study in France. So she was studying in France. Now, when they started to say that they're closing the borders down in Cambodia, and they blamed it all on the US with the Vietnam War and everything that was going on. Of course, Vietnam's next door to Cambodia, pretty much. Again, a lovely country. I had a really fun time traveling Vietnam.
I didn't get that far.
You didn't get that far. It's good. The only thing I missed is Halong Bay in the north, because I had to come back to the UK and I couldn't quite get the time to go there. But I will hopefully return one day once coronavirus leaves us. But yeah, so she was lucky that she, for one reason or another, her life was saved because she was in France on a scholarship to undertake her studies in higher education there. And there's this lady that who, you see these like stories on social media and TV, and you never, you sympathize with them, but seeing it in real life is completely different. And I recorded a documentary with a friend and a volunteer that I met there from Germany, a lady called Maxi Borchet. She lives in, she's going to kill me because I pronounced the surname wrong, but she lives in Germany. And Maxi was similar to you, a filmmaker, and we made a documentary together, and on on a camcorder and a sort of half working Mac, we put this documentary together about the school, and it's a 40-minute documentary, and it looks at and follows the story of Mo Yu, who's the founder, and Kim San, who's the caretaker that worked there. And she told us a story, this caretaker, about how the day there was the march where they took all the people out of the capital city into the countryside, because what they wanted to do is get them out there working. And what they said to get them out there, the Khmer Rouge, to get them out of the capital city, they told them that the Americans were going to come and drop bombs. And so everybody followed. Now, the opposition to the Khmer Rouge was the Lol Nol regime, and her husband, Kim Sam, this caretaker, her husband, who's the caretaker at school now, her husband was an officer in the opposition's regime, the Lol Nol regime. She was giving birth to her daughter when they came, the officers from the Khmer Rouge came and said, get out, you need to get to the countryside. And the doctor said, look, the Khmer Rouge are saying the Americans are going to bomb, I'm going to leave. She was in the middle of giving birth, and her husband had to hold a gun to the head of this doctor, so you are delivering my wife's baby. Anyway, she's delivered this baby. Within 5 minutes of the baby being delivered, umbilical cord being removed, etc., etc., she's up with the baby in her arms, walking miles to this river. She gets to the river where they give them all a break. She cleans herself off at this river. And she took us in this documentary through the road that she walked. She took us to the building that was a hospital where she was giving birth. And then she took us the journey that they took to this river. And we went to this riverfront and we had to walk through this grass to get there. And she showed us where she was sat, where she went down into the bank of the river to clean herself. And then they took her out into the countryside. Anyway, some time later, they asked all the men to come with them, that we needed to do some work and help us doing some work. And her father-in-law knew, strong, tough men that could be that could form some resilience and could be a potential threat to the Khmer Rouge. They took the men and they killed them. And she knew, and she said she was sat in this tent, and they made them work through the day. So they had to carry these sort of broomsticks on their shoulders with buckets of water and mud on either side, day in, day out. And they'd give them little bits of bread and beans and the water from a tin of beans. And that was what they had to feed them on. And her daughter was going to die. And her daughter was only kept alive because she starved herself and fed her on the little bit of food they have. She didn't have enough nutrition to breastfeed her or anything like that. But when they took her husband away, they heard the gunshots, and she knew that her husband had been killed, and no warning, no nothing, just dragged him straight out of the tent, took him out, and that happened. And she took us to the field where that tent was based, and she took us to where she thinks she was approximately, because she remembered the trees. And she said she used to find shade at the trees, and she remembered the trees, an absolute vivid memory of what she went through. And she was really emotional, of course, taking us through it all. And what was really poignant for me is her daughter survived. And her daughter lives in sort of northern Cambodia at the moment. And one of the kids that I really got on with at the school that we were teaching at the summer school was a kid called Samarat. And Samarat was really cheeky, chappy, young kid, always like, Teacher Bilal, what does this mean? What does that mean? I was like, just get on with it, colour in the can, I've told you what the task is, blah, blah, blah. And he used to laugh because he knew it would wind us up, and he used to have a laugh and a joke with us, and sometimes he'd grab my sunglasses and run off with them. I'd be like, I'm not chasing you, bring them back. Really great kid, really great English, to say he'd just been in this, village school that Moy had created, fantastic school. And I found out whilst we were doing the documentary that he was Kim San, the caretaker's grandson. So the daughter that she'd given birth to and that had just survived through that whole ordeal, she had then had her own kids, one of whom was Samarat, who was now living with his grandma at this school and undertaking his education at this village school. And I looked at him, and it just put everything into perspective. Mm-hmm. And I thought, we're all in different circumstances, and I can't say that, somebody that's had a relationship breakdown and is going through a divorce is any worse off or any better off than her. Everything in context, and it's all down to your own personal resilience. But for me personally, I'll be really frank with you, I was quite emotional after that. Even talking about it makes me feel quite emotional. Yeah. And at that time, I looked at that and I thought, this experience, if it's taught me anything, it's taught me that I can't justify to myself, and like I say, everybody's different, but this was for me only. I couldn't justify sulking to myself endlessly and making excuses not to be able to get up and do something or achieve something when I'd come across somebody who in their late 80s is now a caretaker at the school, giving back and helping young kids because she believes in the power of education. And she went through all of that. And I think those kind of experiences, when you live those kind of experiences, they change you as a person. And that is just inevitable, which is why I say to everybody, one, watch the documentary, it's brilliant. Two, I say to everybody, get out there and volunteer. Go and travel to places like Southeast Asia, to South America, to Africa. Go and find organisations with whom you can volunteer. Don't go for the big kind of organisations and groups that do loads of volunteering expeditions and it's all about going out and being touristy. Go and find those sweet spots where you can really go and learn about different cultures and the community, and it will help evolve you as a person. It'll help make you a better person. Those experiences really helped, and I genuinely mean this, and people might laugh at this, but it genuinely helped shape who I am today and made me really think about and be grateful for what I have. You know, you take your parents for granted, you take a lot of what you have for granted, and actually, to be honest, people that have much less are able to still find that level of happiness and being content. And yet we have all this around us, you know, iPhones at our fingertips, laptops, homes, heating, water, on our beck and call. And so we are really equipped with the tools to succeed, more so than quite a lot of people in this world. And so I say to people, you know, take that and run with it. And go and live that kind of experience, because it will change your life. It really will.
Me and my girlfriend was gonna do that whilst traveling. We was gonna go to Laos and do like an experience. We downloaded this app that someone told us about, where it allows you to stay there for free, obviously food and everything, whilst you do work for them. So it's like really getting that culture vibe, as well as obviously free accommodation and food. But obviously travel's got cut short, so we didn't manage to do it. But we learned about that in Thailand. But going back onto the thing about appreciation as well, is hot water. In India, there was no hot water after 6 o'clock. So after 6 o'clock, which is usually when people usually get showers, I usually get showered just before bed or whatever, it's cold. So the fact that you can't even have a hot shower before bed, just things like that make you really appreciate the small things that we have access to immediately, and you don't even have to think about it. So yeah, man, I think traveling is great for people to definitely do, and I definitely want to do it solo at some point. I don't know why.
I think, you know what, I always like traveling in groups or with someone. I think it's being able to share that experience with people, and certainly I shared it with people that I didn't know. So we were, you know, a new group of volunteers, and we went out together. I think that's quite powerful, because you're learning about one another, and it's quite raw as well. You don't have that dependency. You know, one of the things I really liked about one of the people that I found quite interesting when I was younger was Gordon Ramsay, although he swears every second word. And I read his autobiography, Humble Pie. And in fact, I remember meeting him at Asda Pudsey when he came and did a book signing, and I went and got the book signed. And I read it because there's one thing that he said in the whole thing, and one thing that he said in an interview that was really poignant, and that was that he put himself in France with no money, not understanding the language, because he wanted to learn French cuisine, and he put himself in a foreign country with little to no money, with the clothes on his back and a few things in his bag, and not understanding the language. And that really makes or breaks you as a person. And now he speaks French fluently. Of course, he's done really well for himself. He's had a restaurant with 3 Michelin stars, the highest accolade in the world of cuisine for 19 years. And, you know, personality and that aside, he's achieved what, as a young man, he wanted to go out there and achieve, and he took himself out of the comfort zone of the UK and London and what he knew, and dropped himself into, you know, a complete different environment, a challenging environment, to be able to get to where he wants to get to. So, you know, I think for me, there's that element of, you've got to be prepared to put yourself outside of your comfort zone in order to really grow, because the more stuff you do that you're really comfortable with and that you can do day in and day out, the less likely you are to grow. The only time you will learn and you will grow is when you're doing something that you don't know and you're not comfortable with. And that's really hard for people to do sometimes, I think.
100%. And last year I managed to get a job in France, and I flew out by myself, not knowing anyone there, and came back. Well, not came back, but ended up meeting people that I never thought I would have met, and, you know, had the time of my life. It was only like a two-day trip, really quick trip. But just things like that. And I think the best thing about traveling was meeting people, not just tourists that you meet obviously throughout the world, but locals as well, you know, talking to locals and just understanding where they come from and listen to the life story. That was the best thing about India, having a private driver. She used to talk to, it's called Arjun. He just used to talk to him constantly about what he does and his life and all these crazy things, and how whenever he gets paid, most of it goes to his family and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting how life's so different in different areas of the world, and it's so interesting, and it is very impactful in terms of yourself and also your work. Over there, they work so hard, but yet so fast. So that's what I'm trying to implement now. Work very hard and good at what I do, but also kind of work fast at the same time, because I know people like it to be delivered fast at high quality. So I think just taking different things from different areas that I've seen and just applying it to my own way. Obviously in UK, obviously we'll work way differently over here, but just, you know, there's small little things like that that you get to see and understand, and just implement it in your own way. That's the one thing I definitely learned in terms of business wise as well. So yeah, man, it's interesting. I love speaking about this stuff.
Yeah, I think you know, a lot of people, they don't put an emphasis on self-investment, and you know, this conversation that we've had has been quite theoretical and stuff. And one of the things I really enjoy doing is talking to people on a one-to-one basis. I really enjoy coaching people. I've been really fortunate to being able to do that. And you know, I always say to people, there's a really powerful quote that links back to a poem that Nelson Mandela used to frequent when he was in prison in South Africa for 30 years. And it's a poem by a guy called William Ernest Henley. And the quote is, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul." And it's the last 2 lines of the poem. "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul." And what it means to me is that you can really impact on your future and what tomorrow looks like, and next week looks like, and next year looks like. There will be things outside of your control, but the amount of things in your circle of control are ever more increasing with technological breakthrough, social media, and all the rest of it. You are empowered, and you have the tools to do more. You're more enabled today than any time in human history, and that's absolutely crucial, and that's absolutely true, I think. And then in terms of that point around, you know, you are the captain of your soul, ultimately that comes down to me about the character and the values that you espouse. If you look on all my social media, you'll see the first thing on my Twitter, my Instagram, etc., is a hashtag, and the hashtag is 2 words: be kind. And it's a really simple philosophy, and it's something that for me comes from the way that my granddad was. You know, he didn't have a lot. My parents were in, you know, they didn't have a lot. My dad, when he was growing up, had to wear second-hand clothes, and they didn't have a lot of money. And my granddad used to work at the steel factory, and he used to lug kind of like a huge, you know, those huge bags of onions. He used to put fruit in there from the market where the boot market is in Leeds. There's a steel factory, steel works near there. That's where he used to work. He used to walk home. There was no bus service that he could afford, or taxi service. There were no Ubers back then. And so he'd kind of walk home and instill into my parents that you have to work hard to get somewhere. But even though he had little, when people would come round to our house, he wouldn't let anybody leave without feeding them. You know, he'd always be like, you have to have something to eat. And even though we didn't have or my parents and my dad and my granddad and family didn't have a lot. And ultimately you could wrap up all of what he kind of taught us and his impact on our family into those two words, and it's be kind. And he got a lot of praise. He got a lot of admiration and respect, and people helped him out in the years that in the later years of his life, and you know, visited him and gave him company in a way that I've never seen happen. And you know, the area we lived, it was a brilliant community. I used to know the names of all the elderly people that lived in the bungalows. I used to come back from school, from primary school, walk down the alleyway, and everybody would be sat out in the small little gardens with their sun lounger. And you'd go past and you'd know everybody's name. And Eileen, who lived on the corner with the 3 cats, who was bat crazy, honestly, but hilarious. And I think we lose that sense of community, and people talk about how everybody's looking inwards. We're all becoming more self-centered and selfish. You know, people don't even know their neighbours these days. They don't even talk to their neighbours and say hello. And it saddens me, really, because as much as I think technology could be a great asset to all of us to help and enable us to go out there and achieve things that we couldn't have achieved before, because we have that access to information. We have that ability to learn how to use social media and all the shopping and application add-ons and things to Instagram, and you know, you can create a cart and start selling things, you know, within the space of 10 minutes these days. It's mad. You couldn't do that, and you couldn't reach as many people as you can reach through social media before. And I think, yes, use that in a way to impact on yourself positively, but still keep true to what I think are quite fundamental values of this country. And I think they are the best of British values and the best of human values, which is that sense of community. And, you know, knowing, you know, pop down to your local old people's home, give back a little bit at Christmas, take time to do the things that will pay you back tenfold. And it all comes down to that philosophy of be kind. You know, take the time to be kind, because others might not reciprocate that straight away, but you'll be surprised how willing people are to engage with you. But nobody's really confident enough or willing to take that first step. Yeah. So my biggest advice to anybody is, you know, take a leap into the dark. You might be surprised by what you find. Because the reason why it's called the dark is because you can't see what's there, and if you just step into it, you might just surprise yourself. I mean, you might get a shock, but equally, you will never know. And I think it's better to know than not know. So take a leap in the dark. You might be surprised by what you find, and live your life by those 2 words. It's fundamental to how I do things. And I'm not perfect. I have to remind myself constantly, because people are really good at pissing you off. They just have a real talent at pissing you off, even on the days that you're really in a good mood. Somebody always finds a reason to really tick you off, but you've got to just understand that they will have and you know, sometimes I go off and I'll have my moments. Who doesn't? We're all human. No one's perfect. But I think fundamentally you have to keep reminding yourself and keep checking yourself. And for me, it's that time just before you go to sleep, after you've gone onto the Headspace app and done a bit of meditation for 10 minutes or whatever, you know, or a bit of yoga, whatever floats your boat. I think it's important to spend that little bit of time with yourself. just before you go to sleep, just to reflect on you, your day, your life, what you've done. Could you have done it any better? How you can connect with more people, and just living that philosophy of being kind, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and trying something new, because people will be surprised by how much they can achieve. The one thing that never fails to surprise me, Tom, never, is the potential of the individual. So many people say they can't do stuff, or I'm not sure, and then they do it, and they surprise themselves. And because ultimately, if you're the right type of person in terms of your principles, your values, you are willing to put in the work ethic, you will achieve. It's just a case of whether you've got the get up and go to start, and that's the fundamental piece. So
I think, because I think a lot of people crumble too soon, and you just don't know
stick at it.
Yeah, what could happen if you stuck at it, because these days people do give up too soon, just because it's not instant like Instagram is, or like TikTok is, or whatever. We've realized.
And you'll have heard of the saying, things get worse before they get better.
I always say that. I say that in business terms as well. In terms of money, you've got to lose money in order to gain money, and by that I mean
this is it.
In order to get investment.
People don't get this. Lots of startups, I work in a startup now. I've worked and read about, seen, known people that have been in startups. You don't start making money from day one. Any accountant will tell you, anybody in the finance affair will tell you, any economist will tell you, startups lose a heck of a lot of money. That's why they need a lot of seed fund and investment to get going. So people like yourself that are working in the way that you're working and doing it without, some investors chucking a load of money into you, that's a tough slog. But even those big companies and organizations and startups, you do make a loss before you make profit. That's just how it works, because you have to recoup the investment that you put in, and you have to have a certain amount of investment and resource to be able to do what you want to do anyway, and that all costs money. But equally, you're not going to from day one be able to do things in the way that you will in year 10, because day one nobody knows you. You have to build a brand. You have to put all your processes in place. You have to get exposure. You have to build a clientele. You've got to get your testimonials, all the rest of it, of course, depending on what business you're in. So I think, it is important to realize that things are not going to go brilliant. You're not going to become an instant millionaire overnight. And you're absolutely right. Most people fall down at the fact that they haven't got enough patience and they've not got the level of commitment to stick at it. You have got to stick at it, and you will at the point you don't even expect it. And I think this about your business as well. You'll have a plan. The way you become successful will either be you'll be either one of the very lucky ones that's plan will work out exactly as you've thought it, or you'll get your break in a way that you don't even know now. And it's just because of the way that you are, the exposure that you give yourself, the values that you conduct yourself with, that will lead you to that opportunity. And that opportunity will give you that break to then start to thrive. I genuinely believe that.
100%. Fingers crossed.
It's all about positioning yourself in the right way, and I think you are, and that's really important. People have to position themselves. People don't just walk up to you and give you things. Again, that old saying, you don't just get it on a silver platter. You have to work for it, and you have to put yourself into the circles and the position to be able to achieve it and get it.
It's funny because people say, "Oh, you're so lucky," or like they'll take a blind eye to how much hard work's actually gone into it, just because it's not their field of work. They don't understand. They don't understand how much work gone into it. They just see it as, "Oh yeah, it's an overnight success," or "Oh yeah, he knows this person though, so it doesn't really matter."
I know, but that's the thing. Like, it comes back to take the time to learn. Everybody could go onto social media, YouTube, and learn what you're doing, and they'd have to spend years and years to try and reach where you're at. You said 7 years doing this, and they have to spend a long time to refine their craft. But you I think, you know, people need to realize that, for me, I think, don't go in there with making an assumption. Be open, and be open to learn. And, you know, we talked about this, about learning something new from everybody earlier. I think people need to go in there with an open mindset, with a mindset to want to learn and want to educate themselves on what somebody else is doing, rather than going in there going, oh, he just holds the camera around and, you know, the software does it all for him. What does he actually do? And instead of making those assumptions, I mean, just think about what I've just said, how negative it sounds. And when you say it out loud to yourself, you realize how negative it sounds. But when you're saying that in your own head and making those assumptions, because you're 100 miles an hour and you don't get time to reflect and think about what you're doing, that just becomes normal to you. And all of a sudden, you become quite a negative person without even knowing it. And that, to me, is why I think it's really important for you to step back, think about what you do. And people might think it's fluffy, or it's all of this, or, you know what, I don't do any of this meditation, I don't do any of this reflection and all of that. I don't do mood boards, you know, what the hell are these guys talking about? More fool you is what I would say to them. More fool you, because you can't keep everything up there. You know, even the best of us can't. You've got to have the opportunity to take what's in there out. And I always say it. One of the examples I use, and I love Harry Potter. I grew up with Harry Potter, and in Harry Potter, Dumbledore has this. I can't remember the life of me what it's called. So if you're a mad Harry Potter fan, I do apologise. But he has this kind of like sort of place with a mirror on it. It's like almost a little well in his office, and he takes memories from his mind and drops it into this sort of magical liquid, and he stores memories in there that he can then come back to, and it's almost a way of him removing things from his mind to give his mind more space. And I say that to people, the minute it's in there, it has to stay in there. The minute you write it down, you put it on a mood board and a whiteboard, and you put it in your notes, it's out of there and somewhere else, so you can give yourself space. And subconsciously, you give yourself space. Now, if you put it into notes and you've got, 20 notes a week, it's going to get lost. You're going to stress yourself out. So pick the right mode of choosing how to unload from there onto wherever. For me, being able to sit back and look at a whiteboard and just look at everything and just stare at it and think was important. And clearly that's similar to what you're doing with your mood board, and that gives you a full-on view. You don't have to go through a different note, you don't have to turn the page, it's right there. Everything in one blink you can see in front of you, and that's quite powerful. And I think when people start to take things out of here, start to plan, because what's that saying, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. If you don't do your planning and your preparation, and you think you can just go into things and ace them, you're going to get a big wake-up call, because it is the people that put in the effort to plan, to prepare, to research, that then do the best when they go into any given situation. Yeah. So plan your success. You know what I mean? Map it out. Have ambitions. Let people judge you. Be called crazy, be called weird, do whatever. I guarantee you, the people that are calling you that, give it 5 years, look at where you are and look at where they're at. And I said this back when I was in high school, and I do that now. And I don't want to kind of cast aspersions, I don't want to judge people, but I'd much rather be in the position that I'm at, as opposed to some of those people that thought working hard and being a little bit weird was funny.
Yeah. That's it. It's law of attraction at the end of the day. I feel like when you have things down or written or pictures or whatever it is you want to do down somewhere where you can always see it, I think it's law of attraction. And I truly believe in that stuff, where if you write something down and you look at it every day and you work hard for it, it's gonna come into action at some point, whether it's 2 months, whether it's 2 years, whether it's 20 years, it's gonna come into action at some point. As long as you're consistent with it and don't give up.
Or something might happen, or you might come across somebody, or an experience might happen, and you might come back and think, oh, actually, that link, you get that link to something that you've wanted to do. Whereas sometimes if it's not there in front of you, you could miss an opportunity and you could miss the potential of making one of those points, one of those dreams, one of those goals become a reality, because you've not given yourself the time to take that and extract it from your mind, put it into a medium that you can engage with in a way that is simple and doesn't stress you out and works for you, like your mood board, like the whiteboard that I had. So by being able to look at that information in a clear and simple way, you're not going to miss the opportunities to make those goals, those dreams into a reality, because things will happen in your life. You'll meet people and think, oh, actually, so-and-so could help me achieve that, or I could try and get that through this opportunity. And you can link and connect the dots. You know, everything works together. And I think the world is becoming ever so more connected. We're becoming ever so more closer. And you can see that through the impact technology has certainly had. And I think people need to be aware of that in how they are conducting themselves. And again, that ability to extract things from here, to get that plan, to put it out there, to be able to use that is really, really important. And I think people would benefit from self-investment, creating a plan for themselves. Give yourself timelines, give yourself deadlines, and by the way, give yourself consequences and punish yourself if you don't achieve them. Because if you're procrastinating or being lazy, you are the only person that is going to be able to hold yourself to account. Nobody else is going to. You'll have 100 people there stood in a line that will tell you you're not good enough. You have to be the one to tell yourself that you are good enough, and you have to be the one to check yourself. And that's hard to do. So if you're not doing something, I don't know, don't order the takeaway that you usually order, don't buy the trainers that you want to buy, and only do it when you achieve your goal. Set yourself that standard, have that discipline, because that is how you're going to make yourself achieve. And if you do go and buy the trainers or whatever, I'm just using random examples, and you haven't met your goal, then the only person that you're lying to or kidding is yourself. And if you're happy to do that with yourself, then again, as I said earlier, off for you. And so that's what I would say, you know, in that instance. Tom, I'm just thinking, how long have we been talking?
Almost 2-hour podcast, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't know how much people are going to watch this.
I do want to wrap it up, I think, but the reason why I think it's been such a valuable podcast, and whether it gets 20 views or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Those 20 people are going to benefit from this.
You 20 people will benefit big time.
Exactly. And I think the reason I did it the way I did is because I wanted it to flow so naturally, and we've gotten such a good topic, actually, better than I thought it would have been. Because I didn't want to kind of go on the route of, oh, so what do you do as a job? Oh, you do that. Oh, cool. How did you get there? I think the more important part is the parts that we actually talked about today in this podcast.
Because I could have just sent you my CV otherwise. Exactly. You wouldn't have needed me. Exactly. So I completely agree.
It kind of was my initial plan to kind of go talk about business a bit, and obviously venture off like we always do anyway. But I'm glad that we kind of did it early on, and it kind of just progressed from there. So yeah, I appreciate your time. Honestly, it's been awesome.
No, not at all. And let's see what happens, and maybe in the future we'll talk about something else. And I might get you on my own Instagram. We should probably do an Instagram live and just talk about entrepreneurialism and success, and just, I think the more people that start talking about things, and even people that are starting off, and anybody that's watching this that's doing something that just wants to have a chat, and perhaps through that chat you might inspire or give somebody a little push to do what they want to do, and build your network and connect with people that are similarly minded and have the same mindset as yourself, because that is only going to create you a group of highly talented people that one day might be achieving similarly to you. And, you know, being in that group of people that are on that trajectory to success is incredibly important. So I think, you know, there's multiple benefits of doing stuff like this. But now I appreciate you giving me a shout. I know I'm not a creative or anybody in that sense. I'm completely different to kind of perhaps the usual people that you have on the podcast. But I think what you're doing, I think what you're doing with Lewis is brilliant. I think you guys are a classic example to people, certainly people that have grown up in the area that we've grown up in and had that similar kind of lifestyle. That doesn't matter about your postcode, doesn't matter about what your parents earn, doesn't matter about what school you've been to. All it matters about is how hungry you are for success, how hard you're willing to work. And you've gone down a different route to me. And yet I think I see you as an equal and as a peer. And I think the way that you're the way how ambitious you are and how you're trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve. I really see that was me at a similar age, and even now, I just am a lot calmer now because I've been in the world of work for a while. So I've become more professional and calmer, and I have an ability to communicate in a particular way. But I still get excited about things. I'm still really ambitious. I've still got a list of things I want to achieve. And I'm 28 years old. I have a 20-year plan. And it is highly ambitious, and you know what? We'll see where we get to. Perhaps we need to put a date in the diary for 20 years time, and then come back to it. But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on, Tom. It's been a good chat, as it always is, and hopefully people will find some benefit.
It's the first time I'm showing anyone, and no one's probably watching at this point. If you're watching at this point in the podcast, then comment Bilal. And that's how I know you've watched right to the end. But yeah, I've been working on our new product actually. It's called Project Book. And it's just a way of making, like I said, when I said making things easier, it's just basically a little planner all put in one place. So you've got your storyboards, your shot lists, you've got your ideas.
Also, it's an all-in guide for somebody that wants to get themselves organised and get into doing the kind of work that you're doing.
For your projects, so you've got all your characters, ideas, locations, equipment lists, synopsis, which is the idea, storyboards, and then at the end I've got overview, and then what went well, what didn't, and then cast and crew, so you can always remember who was on set and what you really liked about them. So yeah, it's just a way of, because although you got Word doc and whatnot, which I'm probably going to do an online version of this as well, which is going to obviously allow them to do a bit more writing than you would with paper. I think the reason why it's so important to have a paper version is so you can take on set with you. I always make sure I take something on set with me, even though I've got it there in digital.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, I think I saw this on your story a while back, but when you do the launch, give us a shout. We'll be interested to learn more about it. And of course, I'll share it out on the social platforms and see what you get. But it's just a really good example of how to help other people out. By the way, your logo on the front cover looked quite cool, actually. So yeah, make a diary for the everyday professional. I'll buy it.
I will do. Maybe that's the next thing. Maybe. That's one of the things that was on there as well. That's one of the things that I ticked off. Same with starting a production team and all that sort of stuff. But yeah.
You're getting through the list. It takes a lot of effort and time, but you get through the list. Listen, I in my plan, as crazy as it sounds, I've got an ambition for 20 years' time, and people might think that's ridiculous, but I think you have to aim big, and you have to know what you're heading towards, and it's a long road, but you know what? If you can get there in 10, brilliant. And then what's the next challenge? And I think you have to keep yourself alive by giving yourself a constant challenge. What are you aiming towards? And if you don't have that ambition and that purpose, then that breeds laziness, it breeds procrastination, it breeds all of those things that will hold you back. So, be bold, be brave to have that ambition. And like I said earlier, biggest piece of advice and takeaway, be kind. Always be kind. Live by that philosophy. Probably a good place to end. Yeah,
it definitely is. So let's call it there then. Let's just say this is a podcast. This is literally. It might be the longest one yet. Although I don't know, you got some conversation.
I'm happy with that record.
But yeah, thank you so much once again, and we'll definitely be in touch. And it'd be good to actually do another podcast when, let's just say, a few months' time, when Corona's gone and our lives start picking up again. Things will be happening.
Yeah. And I said to people watching, if there's anything you want advice on and stuff, like I say, I've got quite an extensive background in coaching and things. Comment, let Tom know, and if there's anything that will be useful for you, get in touch. And I'm sure Tom will put my Instagram handle up and things like that, and give us a follow, and let's create this progressive network of people that are highly ambitious and are going to go and achieve some great things, and see how we all do. But yeah, thanks again for inviting me along, and let's talk soon.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Bilal, take it easy.
Enjoy the rest of your evening, mate. See you soon.
Bye-bye.